This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving? Episode 5, The Origin of Henry's Child, Part 1.
Hey, Tom from Henry's Child here. I'm sitting here with Andrew Smith and Rich Clinton for our 5th Henry's Child podcast.
Number 5.
Today, we are going to talk about the origin story of Henry's Child. And the origin of the origin story came about because last week we talked about how people were kicked out of bands and their influence and their influence of songwriters and how they began writing songs. And it just kind of made sense to talk about how Henry's Child actually got birthed.
Wow. So an origin story. So that's not about the radioactive accident at the nuclear power plant and Rich and I were playing in the mud just outside and the isotope hit us and then
it could be. I don't know. I don't know the origin story.
That origin story.
I know what I've been told. It's like anatomy, right?
I know what I've been told.
Who's Dr. Manhattan?
I'll be him. The light is tearing me to pieces. So probably should start with, I think timeline-wise, we left off with you about to move up here?
Yeah. Well, I was after I got kicked out of my other band. I was in another band, Spoken Truth, with my friend Mike.
Right, Mike Sears.
Yeah. And we were playing around and working, and then life things happened and everything else, and we decided to move to Oregon. So I quit a working band and moved to Oregon.
Now, Risque was a bit of a pop hair metal band overall.
Yeah, it was a hair metal band.
But Spoken Truth, you guys were much cooler. I remember listening to a few of those songs. How would you coin that? REM-ish kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was weird. It's the early days of alternative rock.
Right.
Before alternative rock was called alternative rock, it was called college
radio.
College radio.
Yeah.
Yep. REM.
REM. So it was maybe a little heavier version of REM.
You guys had a lot of melody, though. I remember listening to those songs.
Yeah.
And Mike was a good songwriter, too. So you guys probably had a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I did have a lot of fun, and I was sad to leave.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I mean,
he's your best friend too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My oldest friend. We're still friends. We've known each other a long time.
Decades.
Yep. So yeah, we just made a move to Oregon in 1990, and I started looking around, and nothing much happened. Played in the country cover band for a little while, slumming it. I hate to say slumming it because
you made a bunch of money doing that too, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't you?
The most money I've ever made in 1 hour for anything not illicit is playing country music.
Not illicit.
It was at Bonanza.
Bonanza.
Remember Bonanza? It was Bonanza. It was their Christmas party down in Sutherland.
Nice.
Yeah. Paid $100 in 1 hour.
Gotta love that.
Pretty good.
Dang, son.
That's some serious money.
That's
That's
almost legal or something.
That's almost lawyer money.
I know.
All right.
So yeah, after that, it was just it was the old days, man. It's like finding people, especially when I was from someplace else and I didn't know a lot of people or anything. I hadn't networked. Just you start looking around. Where you go to music stores.
And then what happens at a music store?
You look at ads or bulletin boards and look for something that may work.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well,
and what did I find? Oh, it was Andy's music, first off.
Which is even more
So if you've
poetic.
been in Eugene for a long time, you would remember Andy's music on, what was it, 13th?
Love that guy.
Right next to Berg's?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a block up from the library.
The old library.
Where the library was before.
Yeah. And Berg's, the ski place.
It's still there?
It's still there? Wow. Anyway, and wish Andy's was. And that's where I met Greg Biller, too. Greg worked
no, me too. Andy's was great.
But they had a bulletin board, and there was an ad, and I was looking around. So strange because the description of the type of music they wanted to play was probably more akin to what I did in Spoken Truth than what actually they were doing. Anyway, the ad said looking for guitarist and influence Sugar, Husker Du, Jane's Addiction. I'm like, okay, and something. Maybe there may be Styx or something on there too. Something
probably.
Yeah. Anyway, I like all those bands, so I expected some sort of like alternative kind of heavier alternative college rock type thing or something, and well,
you got the 4-song tape. It wasn't too far off of that. A little more epic, perhaps.
A little more epic, yeah.
We definitely had an epic bent.
So I called the number, and I remember Rob answering the phone, Rob Wynia, and said, yeah, I saw your ad, and so I decided to set up a time to come and meet him, and I met him over on, what was it, Donald Street? Arthur Street.
I was working.
Yeah,
You got to meet Rob because I was working.
Yeah.
I was actually pissed.
Arthur and 13th. I just remember it was pouring down rain.
Yeah.
So I brought in a tape of my ideas and stuff like that, and we hit it off. And
Oh, yeah. He was excited.
yeah,
I remember.
so-
I got home from work, and he's like, I met the guy. Listen to this. He immediately put your tape in. We listened to that tape all the way through, beginning to end.
yeah.
He was excited. And then he either set up the time for you to come and play with us or called you back immediately. It was one or the other.
I don't remember. It's a long time
And you
ago.
were pretty excited by that tape, too. I remember you were pretty jacked up.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't met you yet. It was like,
Right.
I don't remember, it was another day or two, whatever.
Yeah,
But anyway,
a couple days.
yeah, I met Rob first. We hit it off, and it was cool. And but the thing is, it's like, still, I want to hear how you guys met, because you guys were roommates, and then there was
Yeah.
Craig, who was floating around.
He was
Craig,
a friend.
yeah, well, Craig did lights for him early on or something.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. Well, how did you meet Rob?
Well, yeah, this is great. So Rob and I went to high school together. I didn't know him. He was 2 years behind me, and he was best friends with one of my good friends' little brother. So I peripherally knew him at best. Nice enough guy, talented guy even back then. You know, he sang in choir. Everybody knew he was a musician. And what I loved is that he and his friends were really into Duran Duran. And so they had the whole hair thing and the clothes. Seriously, it was great. I mean, but they nailed it, and it was fun. So fast forward, a mutual friend of ours was putting together a Dungeons and Dragons game. Okay. And once weekly game in your early 20s, an excuse to drink beer and play D&D. And I show up, and Rob's there because we had the same mutual friend. And we're like, oh, I kind of know you. Oh, I kind of know you. Some in that first night, I quoted a Rush lyric, and he finished it, or vice versa.
Right.
As silly as that sounds. And we're both like, hey, I know that lyric.
Do you remember what the Rush lyric was?
I'm pretty sure it was Xanadu, for I will dine on honeydew and drink the milk of paradise. And we laughed about that.
And you referenced Xanadu in the last podcast.
Yeah, you know, it's an influential song.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, that evening, Rob, I think, I was riding a bike at that time. I didn't even have a car. So Rob, we threw my bike in the back of his car, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. We drive back, and we're talking about music. I told him I was horribly disappointed in modern music. I hadn't heard anything good. This is pre-grunge scene up in Seattle.
What year is this?
Early 91.
Okay.
Okay, maybe late 90, early 91.
Yeah.
So the scene in Seattle has not hit at all yet. And so he and I are talking, and he goes, well, what do you mean there's no good music? Have you heard Jane's Addiction? And I said, no. And he goes, you're coming to my house tomorrow. You working? I said, I'm not working. He's like, great. Be there like noon. We'll wake up late. Come over. So I rode my bike over to Rob's. And he's like, all right. And he puts on that live album, that first album. Starts out with Whores. Woo. That absolutely blew my mind. So we talked about music. I told him I'd wanted to be in a band. I had no idea that I could play a guitar. I had no idea that I could sing. I had notebooks full of poetry, and I shared that with him. And he's like, hey, these are good, man. I'm like, well, he said he still had an old P-bass, Fender P-bass, beautiful bass, and this little tiny like 8-inch amp. That's all he had. Okay. He'd given up on bands. I think my enthusiasm was a little overwhelming and kind of drug him along. He's like, fine, you find the other players for the band and I'll play with you. I'll play bass. Yeah. All right, done deal. So immediately I'm putting ads up and we're finding people. We get a guitar player, Andy Dent, great guy. Been in band Station Wag, still plays with him, and played with him for a while. Couldn't find a drummer. During this time, we're writing songs, and I'm learning how to write songs with Rob. Then we meet Pete, where we go through drummer after drummer, and Pete tries out, and we tried out in Pete's house playing in his hallway. It was hilarious the way the setup was. Yeah. We had open doors. His drum kit was actually in a bedroom kind of forward, just so we could hear everything. Yeah. And Pete was immediately good.
Of course.
You know when you know, right? And immediately we felt that. So the four of us started writing some songs together. And then we realized we wanted to go to a different direction with a guitar player. So told Andy that and moved on and started looking for a guitar player. We tried out, this is true story, 27 different guitar players.
Wow.
Rob started counting, okay, because no one there was a ton of metal guys back then.
You start counting after what, 10?
Yeah,
Like,
but a little
okay,
bit.
this is getting weird.
But it was getting weird. But there were a ton of metal
Frustrating.
guys back then.
Of course.
Okay. And there were a ton of like this sort of, I want to call it a little bit alt country, early college radio, what you were talking about. But we wanted that. We wanted that.
You know what that was
crossover.
called? That had a name back then.
What was that?
It was the No Depression movement.
Sure. A little bit of that
Yeah.
was, yeah. So we wanted.
Wilco and was
Right.
just starting.
Yeah.
And Sunbolt.
BR 549
Yeah.
was another one of those
Yep.
bands. So looking for someone, though, we again wanted someone who could play the heaviness of Jane's Addiction, okay, and then be able to get quiet. We wanted that dynamic and couldn't find anybody. Well, during this time, Rob and Pete, this took almost a year. Rob and Pete were practicing every night together.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons they became so incredibly tight.
Right.
And finally, though, they just wanted another guitar player to play with. So they actually called Andy Dent back and started playing with him again.
Yeah.
And then you answered the ad.
What about Ed Cole?
Oh, right. Oh, God.
Was it Ed or Andy that's on the original tape?
Ed.
Okay.
Ed was fantastic.
Yeah.
Ed had played with Mr. Bungle, actually. He's got a credit on that album, the first album.
Yeah.
He was a remarkable guitar player. Very creative, no ego, slave to the song. Except he had a brand new infant child. And said from the very beginning, I can help you guys with this demo. I'd be happy to. These are great songs. He was all excited.
To the child.
But I can't go on tour. I can't do gigs. And great. We'll at least get a good demo out of it. And we did. We got a good demo that got you, so that was totally worth it. And Ed, I'll tell you, if he hadn't had the infant child, he would have been the guitar player. We were all excited by him. And he was such a demure ego with the size of my head and Rob's head in that room. I mean, there's very little air left to breathe at that time. So anyway, we get that demo tape. You walk through the door. A couple of days later, I get to meet you. Irony of ironies, Ron walks in first. Now Rob told me you were a big guy, and the guy walking in with the amp first was Ron. So I assumed Ron was you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're Rich. Like, no, that's Rich.
Yeah.
It was funny. And you knew it just like we did within 5 minutes.
I remember some story that Rob told you he's huge and he's bald.
Yeah.
Because I'd shaved my head back then.
Yeah,
And
you did.
This is
You got a good look, man.
Well, it's pre people shaving their head.
Right. And I know I shocked you because I had the blonde mohawk then.
And all the earrings and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all part of that.
That was back when your hair mattered. In
Right.
bands.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hair still matters, Tom.
Tom had a lot of hair.
Well, I did have a lot of hair. I also think we should take pause for just a moment and set a little bit of context because both of you guys have said names, and I want to make sure that everybody listening to this podcast understands the context around it.
Okay.
So Rob, that Rich was talking about, is Rob Wynia from the band Floater.
Right.
Pete is Pete Cornett, also from the band Floater.
Right.
Who went on to literally like less than a month ago, they were inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Much to their credit.
And so those guys went off and had their own Floater baby, which we'll talk about. But I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that that's who we were talking about.
Yeah.
So getting back to the tape, there's a reference to this tape. This tape is a four-song demo that was Henry's Child.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the songs was on Floater's first album.
Manic.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
He-Manic, yeah.
He-Manic, yeah.
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 It survived. It's a great song. And what's fascinating about that, again, so it's how this sort of all just morphed, which is where the story gets fun. So Rich tries out twice, right? You came twice in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Or 3 days.
Yeah.
And because you had time and we had time.
Mm-hmm.
So first day we knew it. Everyone was super excited. Second day you came back. It just solidified everything. We're all excited. The day after the second time we played together, when everyone was all excited, we're setting up time to keep playing, right? We're ready to roll.
You're missing a little chunk here too because remember I had to go to California.
Right.
Yeah, you gave me the tape and I was gone for like probably a week.
Right, and is that when you learned the entire thing in the wrong key?
No, that's when
I had to adjust the
That's when I learned everything in like the proper way.
Standard tuning.
Yeah, standard tuning. I didn't know anything at the time about drop D.
Right.
And everything was written in drop D.
I think all 4 of those songs are drop
I think
D.
so. And I learned all of it just playing North standard
Right.
bar chords.
Did
and everything.
Rob show that to you when you got there? Like drop D?
Yeah.
Because I remember
yeah.
you just sort of lit up.
I just went like, okay.
1 finger power chords.
Yeah, and it felt very much like cheating to me. It's like tuning your guitar to an open tuning and just using a slide. It just like there's not a lot involved in that.
Rich, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah, but come to find out, if there wasn't drop D, there would have been no grunge or anything.
Wouldn't have existed.
Well, and a lot of other things,
Yeah.
before that. But yeah, I mean, I took the tape with me down to California and I learned the 4 songs.
Yeah, you had them all down. I remember we were all impressed.
I came back.
Those
and-
weren't easy songs. I mean,
No.
a couple of them were, but
But it was that little bit of time that, and came back. And we remember, where was it? On Seneca, you guys worked.
well, Anderson's polishing
Yeah, and we
And
practiced in the warehouse.
in the warehouse. That's
Yeah.
right. In that upstairs area.
Yep.
Well, then this was fun for me.
Right.
Right as everyone is excited, we've got the full band. I am just, my enthusiasm, my fire is lit once again. I'm ready to like portion out practice. I'm talking to Roy about using the offices inside to practice where it's warmer, moving our equipment in there. And then Pete calls me up and wants me to come over. I get there and he says, I think I want to really just concentrate on the trio. I don't want to be part of the 4. This guitar player is amazing. I don't want to be part of that. Now there's more story there, but I'm going to leave that alone.
This is after 2 practices.
After 2
Yeah,
practices.
I'm a wet behind the ears.
You barely know us.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't list our last names off if we asked
Right.
you at that point. And I get to drive out to your place and break this news to you.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Rob makes it very clear. Remember, Rob and I were roommates. We
Yeah.
started this whole thing from our own conversations and our surfing trips to the coast and our mushroom-filled skiing and snowboarding trips, this whole generation of the idea. So he's still all in. He's like, Pete doesn't want to play.
Right.
For personal reasons, that's great. Rob's like, I'm in. This is going to be great. Well, I get to go out and talk to you. So sitting in your living room, tell you Pete's quit. And I think I got the classic from Rich.
Yeah.
I can't do it as well as you can. That's it. And what to do now? We're talking about songs and songwriting. And we're talking about these songs. And I said, we'll still play them. They're written for this band. Great. And he was like, well, you said, I've got this idea.
You're right.
And I'm like, all right, what is it? So I've got some words. My last singer didn't like them. He didn't want to sing them.
Right.
And you give them to me, and I'm like, whoa, I can see why he didn't want to sing them. But sure, I'll give it a shot. What do you got for a guitar melody, Rich? And you start playing me 2 notes, which I thought was a great, in retrospect, a beautiful test.
Right.
It was more like, what do you got? And it became the first song we ever wrote
Yeah.
in the basement. It was so good, we went out and recorded it that day.
Yeah.
I really feel like that was the bond where we started building that trust piece.
Yeah, it was different because I met you secondly to Rob.
Yep.
But I just remember my first impression of you was like, whoa, this guy's a freak.
That's a lot
You're
of
wearing
people's-
your Pakistani worker pants with combat boots and your jacket with the long stringy blonde hair and you're just completely over the top. And, I had not met your personality type yet in my life.
Wow, you got your cherry popped all in one
Oh,
one fell
yeah.
swoop, huh?
It was
Couple slaps and
it
boom.
was something. Well, what was important to me is it really felt like that was the beginning of the bond of the trust. You felt it. That was a good song, and we knew it.
Well, you've always, I'm not going to say you've always had enthusiasm in spades. So we never had to worry about that. I mean, you're always gung-ho. You still are. I mean, that's what's infectious about you. I mean, some people take that the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
they feel it to be fake. Of course it's not fake. It's real. But I'd never played with anybody that was so like gung-ho and wanting to do it. And so yeah, from there it's like we decided we had a bond,
Yeah, and
And
we
of
did.
course Rob was still involved for
Yep.
actually quite a while. It's funny too because you look back on the timeline and we're talking about from meeting and inception of me joining Henry's Child to the break of the original Me, You, and Rob is probably only like 3 or 4 months.
But it was
Yeah.
it was very intense 3 or 4 months.
But a lot of time was put into that, like
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 months.
Absolutely.
So one thing, Andrew, that you mentioned was you had, and you might have even just passively mentioned it. You said that when you wrote In the Basement, that's when you achieved that level of trust with Rich. And we talked last week. I think last week we actually landed on trust being sort of the applause for each other of like, wow, we can actually write songs together. So just a question, was In the Basement ever recorded?
As a matter of fact, it was. I actually have a surprise for Rich. I don't think he realized I have a copy of that.
Oh, great.
So you guys up for playing that for everybody?
Sure, I guess.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is...
Do we need a disclaimer?
About your lyrics?
Well,
yeah.
No. Well, lyrics are lyrics, but I mean disclaimer about the whole thing.
No.
We were 20-something. There you go. That's a disclaimer.
What the best disclaimer is, this is me thinking you might be quitting the band because I went to tell you we don't have a drummer anymore. I didn't want to lose you. You're a great guitar player. I knew it. And you and I had a chance to bond, and you played 2 notes, and I started singing over it, these twisted words you wrote. You liked the melody, and we went out inside your little studio and your little 4-track and stood there together in the little studio room and recorded the whole thing.
As a complete aside,
yeah,
how we didn't know that was going to be the beginning of using that space for
years. I know, that's right.
And writing everything there.
That's right.
I've said before that, when I die, I will haunt that space.
Oh, wow.
Is that the Creswell place?
The people that live there, I hope they don't
there probably
listen
walk
to this.
out there and see Henry's Child in the cement there and wondering what that's all about.
Exactly. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and play it.
They'll find out.
In the Basement on a 4-track.
You guys were dark back then.
Yes, we were. Rich and I bonded over our mutual love of serial killers, obviously.
I like cereal too.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know, that was the beginning with the trust and the bond established between the two of us. And Rob's still obviously actively involved. We had to go find ourselves a drummer, right?
Yep.
So we put up more ads looking for drummers. We put out feelers to everybody we knew looking for drummers. My favorite, we tried 4 or 5. Is that right?
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, I know you are.
Guy with no symbols.
Oh, my God. Met a guy. God, I wish I remembered his name.
Dread.
Great look. He was an airbrush artist, and he was good at it.
Like 6'3".
I know,
tall,
skinny.
dude. Yeah.
He listened to the demo tape. He's like, oh, yeah, totally excited. And I remember in his garage, he had his drum kit, and he played for just a minute.
Yeah.
And he could play. Mm-hmm. Like, great, come out and try out for us. So he shows up in his VW van with the airbrushing on the sides, comes in. Rob got there early, and the three of us had practiced, gone through the songs without a drummer a couple of times, just so we knew we could do. And Rob meets him. He's excited too. And he starts setting up his kit. He looks around. His girlfriend was there helping him. Yeah. And he says, oh, man, guys, I forgot my cymbals. Oh, not even his hi-hat.
It's like forgetting your amp.
It was just beautiful. And then we're like, okay, well, let's just let's just play a tune. We'll play something. Just keep the beat. No. He'd never played with anyone before.
No.
Our hearts were broken.
Right.
The coolness quotient went down dramatically.
So he had the looks, but not the chops.
Oh, dreadlocks, the whole man.
Or the cymbals.
He didn't have, he had the looks, but not the symbols. Let's put it that way. Then we, did Dan answer our ad or did we answer him? How do we meet Dan?
I don't remember.
I thought it might have been a mutual friend, something like that.
Dan, if you hear this, maybe you'll remember.
Dan Pacheco, great guy, good man. So we transported to his place. He said, hey, come practice at my place. I've got a PA.
Yep.
I've got my drum kit set up in my garage. It's insulated. It's perfect.
Yep.
We're kind of excited. We show up. It's awesome. We start playing with Dan. Dan had that giant kit, man, with that huge rack.
Yeah.
Dan can play.
Yeah.
We were excited, and he was into it.
Oh, yeah.
Dan lit up when we started playing.
Sure.
We played with Rob a couple of times with Dan, and then Rob bowed out. He's, remember, this took time. He said the direction we were going to go with Dan was not one that he wanted to go in. I understood that. Plus, floater was becoming a thing.
Yeah, he was already still playing with Pete, and we don't know what was going on in the background. They were probably already formulating what they're going to do with that.
Well, they were still playing with Andy Dent, and they played a couple shows. I'm going to screw the name up, the Dogs or something
like that. Yeah.
Before it became floater.
Sure.
I went to all those shows. You did too. I went to a
Yeah.
bunch of those shows with Andy. Anyway, so now it's you, me, and Dan, and we got to find a bass player. Slowly cycling through the people.
Yeah.
And we tried out a few bass players. Remember the guy that could sing really high, that was older?
Yeah.
He was good, but
Yeah.
much more wanted to play more police type stuff.
Yep.
And that dude could sing.
Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely.
he had a stratospheric voice. And then, but he didn't want to play the style we wanted to play. And finally,
yeah,
go
but
ahead.
there's a little note here.
ahead.
Remember what we decided we were going to do after Rob quit? What were we going to be?
We were going to be the heaviest band you'd ever heard.
Yes.
And with songs named Dead,
Whole.
Whole. Oh, yeah. It was good. It was fun. I mean, I think a case of Keystone Light every single practice made us.
Keystone Light.
Well,
Come on.
did we buy beer that good?
No.
Milwaukee's Best Light.
No.
Oh, what was it?
I had to have it was like a prerequisite of like two
Oldies.
40s of oldie.
Right.
to
I drank the
practice.
light beer.
Yeah.
I drank the light beer. I was trying to stay thin. It wasn't working for me. So then my roommate Chris, who played guitar,
Chris Holm.
another great human being. Love that guy. Chris, Rich will write the bass lines. You just need to learn them. He was a complete grinding practice hound.
Yep.
And Rich won't write anything you can't play. And come be our bass player.
You know, Chris is a perfect example of personality over talent.
Absolutely.
Lovely guy.
Yep.
Great guy.
Yep.
I was resistant
Uh-huh.
because, he was your roommate and he just played a little acoustic guitar when you guys go down and play Joe Federico's or
Oh,
whatever.
that's right. You came to those too.
Yeah.
That's
They had-
right.
Guitarist from the Rolling Stones was there before you guys. It's so trippy. Taylor.
Borrowed my guitar.
Anyway, Chris is just a great guy.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
I was just, okay.
Once you met him, you're like, okay, I can do this.
There's people you'll work with, and there's some people it's like, no. But Chris, no.
So then we had
He was the one.
we had the band, and Rob and I had decided that neither of us could use the name Henry's Child, because that was initially it was Henry's Children. Nicky Yappo actually is the one that said you should change that to Henry's Child, and 20-year-old egos, we can't use that name,
Right.
So we wanted to be literary, I think, right?
Yeah.
And Algernon was born.
Yep.
Algernon.
From?
Flowers for Algernon.
Right.
Daniel Keyes.
Yeah.
The author that Isaac Asimov said I would sacrifice everything I have ever written to write one story this good.
Yeah.
Asimov said that about
It's
him.
a good one.
It is. And we played our one show, the Lieberg Grange Hall.
Monsters of Rock. I remember it was in the summertime, and it was, I believe that John Jessel from Tortura,
Uh-huh.
I think they played that show when they were still called Red Rum.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that's
no,
where
that
we
was
met
pre-Red Rum.
Dave.
That was pre-Red Rum.
Yeah, pre-Red Rum. But that's the band that I bonded with John and Dave,
Right.
Crazy Dave. And we had that whole Springfield connection for some reason.
Yeah.
With all the Springfield bands.
We just enough heaviness that
Yeah.
they enjoyed us. So we played that show. And after that show, we decided we wanted to change our songwriting.
Yeah.
We wanted to expand. And we wanted to find a another drummer. And what's amazing is how you meet people, how there's full circle in life.
Right.
And I love this. So Pete Cornett initially quits.
From Floater, yeah.
Initially quits Henry's Child. He is riding down the street one day on his bike.
On 7th Street.
Yeah. And he hears someone playing drums. And he stops and sits on the guy's porch and listens for 20 minutes.
Yep.
That guy's done playing. Pete pounds on the door, says, "Dude, you're really good. I know 2 bands that are looking for drummers." And because at this point, weren't Rob and I still roommates? Oh, no, we weren't. But we're still good friends. We still went snowboarding all the time.
No, because you were living with Chris.
That's right.
how we got
But so
Chris,
Rob
yeah.
and I we were still tight. So he knew we were looking for a drummer. He must have told Pete.
God, my mind went right back to the house.
I know. And he gives our name and the phone number, and he gives, was it TV 616? Thresher. Hoots Thresher.
Yeah.
And they were looking for a drummer at the time. It was before Keith decided to play drums. He was still playing guitar.
Were they 2 minutes 8?
They were 2 minutes 8.
Yep.
And he calls us, and Jeff comes out, and we meet the most GQ jock-looking dude wearing a tank top, mid-90s shorts, and I think he was wearing flip-flops.
Of course, he was a shoe salesman at Fred Meyer
That's
on
a
West 11th, right?
shoe salesman
That's
at Fred
right.
Meyer. And we were looking at, you and I are looking at him going, whatever.
Right.
And he starts playing.
Yep.
Bam.
Boom. Yep.
He tried to play a couple of songs, didn't work out. What actually made it work, I still vividly remember, is, let's try to write something right now. We've got a mellow song. And he started playing this mellow riff, and he started playing this very tasty beat between his hi-hat and his snare. And we were both just immediately locked in.
Yep.
Because he had light hands, he had feel, he had touch. It was really something. We knew it immediately.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And that launched it.
that did it. Yeah, I mean, having to get rid of Dan was hard.
I love
Remember
Dan.
Jeff
Dan's a
actually
great guy.
Jeff came to a practice.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, he did.
and just to kind of see what we're all about.
It was very mercenary of us, and Dan's a fantastic person.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't deserve that. I
No,
mean, that
not
was
at all.
that's how it worked back then. At least in our perception, that's how it had to work. And
Right.
it was cutthroat, and I would never do it that way again in my life.
But you're correct in saying that, Jeff, he just set us in a different trajectory.
Absolutely. We could write anything with
It
him.
was the right trajectory.
Yeah.
It was what we needed. It was, what we needed to do what we wanted to do.
Expand the songwriting.
Right.
And most importantly, what was fascinating is all of us felt it.
Yeah.
We almost immediately were 3 hours a night, 6 nights a week.
Right.
Like, all of us moved our schedules whatever way possible. Remember, Jeff used to get up at 7. We'd practice from
Right.
8 to 11.
Yeah, and remember, he didn't even have a car.
Yeah, I know.
He was a drummer with a motorcycle.
So he had
So-
to call his stuff out there, right? I mean, it was a thing, but we all felt it.
Right.
And God, within a month and a half or 2 months, we were in the studio cutting "Drink Me."
Well, to put
It happened that quickly.
Yeah,
It happened that quickly.
We wrote those songs, and then of course some of those songs made it onto Mumbles and Screams. Headlights was on that. Listen Closely was on it.
Not listen close.
No,
Pinball,
yeah.
pinball, and headlights.
But the to give an idea of the timeline, we played that Monsters of Rock show as Algernon in July or so in the summer of '93. We played our first gig as Henry's Child with me, you, Jeff, and Chris in December.
Oh, that was October. Was it December?
December of '93.
So less than 6 months later, and we had
Yeah.
was "Drink Me" done then? Yeah, it was in
Yes,
'93.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was again compressed time.
sure.
You spend 3 hours a night. You can do amazing
3 hours a night,
things.
5 nights a week, right?
So I guess that's probably the end of part 1.
Yeah.
You think stop in there, Tom? What do you think? Go
We're
ahead.
missing a point here.
Sure.
We became Henry's Child.
Yes.
How did we become Henry's Child opposed to Algernon?
Oh,
Oh, that's a good question. How did that happen, Andrew?
I actually called up Rob and asked him and said, "Hey, this Algernon name isn't working for us. Henry's Child is a fantastic name." Now, they had become Floater
Yes.
and started doing their thing. I was at the show when Andy Dent's last show with Dave sitting in the audience. Dave Amador sitting in the audience. I was at that show.
Remember Dave, Rob, and Pete coming to a basement party at Jeff's when we were
That's
playing one of our
right.
very, 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 maybe our very first
That was our
show.
first show.
Yeah,
That was our
yeah.
first show.
Across the street from
Average Joe.
Average Joe, who lived with him, Keith
That's right. I mean, full circle.
from Thresher. Yeah.
It's a small community.
Interesting.
So be that as it may, I asked him that, and Rob was like, "Absolutely, it is a great name. Someone should use it."
Mm-hmm.
Bit like a Texture's on Fire, right?
Right,
Someone has to use
exactly.
it. And it got born.
Right.
It got born.
because I think that's an important connection, because I think a lot of people get confused when they heard that Rob and Pete and you were and me were in a band called Henry's Child before Floater, and then Henry's Child's still a band. I don't get it.
Right.
You know.
But that's exactly how.
Yeah.
That's exactly how.
Hey guys, Tom here. Listen, before we signed off, I wanted to acknowledge that my mic placement on this particular episode of the Henry's Child podcast was pretty janky. So if you've made it this far, thank you for being a super fan and hanging in there with us. We really, really appreciate it. And before we go, I'd like to request of you, if you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more stories and more songs, past and future, from Henry's Child, please go to the iTunes store and give us a 5-star rating. And of course, if you use an Android device, go to the Google Play Store and give us a 5-star rating there. Both of them help tremendously. If you'd like to reach us directly, you can do so over email. And the address for that is henryschild@henryschild.com, or you can always reach out to us over Facebook. We're pretty active on there. So thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
It came out my mouth.